All right, I will say welcome everyone to our online learning webinar. It's presented jointly with Quality Matters and Cidi Labs, tools to bolster quality initiatives for Canvas customers. So thank you everyone for joining us. Captioning is available. There's a little button that if you want to see the closed captions, those will be available. And thank you very much for attending today. We have three great presenters, and they will come on in order of that's listed here of Angel, Kenneth, and Claudia. And then I will introduce myself as I'm Jim Snyder, as well as Jennifer Malkovich, who from Cidi Labs. I'm from Quality Matters, and we're the hosts. We'll be monitoring the chat and all of that as we go. So welcome everyone. If people are still putting in the chat where they're from, so we appreciate that. That's nice to know where everyone is, and we will get started. Just before we get started, I'm going to talk a little bit about Quality Matters, give you a little introduction to us. Quality Matters is the global organization leading quality assurance in online and innovative digital teaching and learning environments. It provides a scalable quality assurance system for online and blended learning used within and across organizations. When you see QM certification marks on courses or programs, it means they have met QM course design standards or QM program review criteria in a rigorous review process. Quality Matters has over 1,500 institutional members in over 30 countries. We're used by higher ed, K-12, and other organizations offering continuing education and professional development. It's a scalable process led by credentialed reviewers that is based on feedback and continuous improvement. And QM certified courses are recognized as quality courses at the national level. And then just a little bit more, I'll put into the chat in a second some of these free resources. It's nice. This is an open webinar for everyone. So there are some resources that are available on our website, links to additional free QM webinars like this one that we offer every so often. We have an accessibility and usability resource site. So if you're looking for accessibility and usability resources, it's a free site that you can join. We do have a bridge to quality online course design guides for both higher ed and K-12. So if you're looking to for some tips and tools, that document is available, as well as our research library is available if you want to dive more into the research. Quality Matters offers a lot of professional development offerings. One of them is our addressing accessibility and usability, but there are some other offerings, and I'll put those in the chat in a second, as well as our invite you to attend in person our QM Connect conference that's happening this November in Tucson, Arizona. So that's a little bit about Quality Matters. I'll turn it over now to Jennifer Malkovich from Cidi Labs to talk a little bit more about Cidi Labs and what they do.
Thanks, Jim. And again, it's great to see such an amazing turnout for this webinar and such broad coverage across the globe. Just a brief introduction to Cidi Labs if you're not familiar, although I do see some familiar names in the chat. We are thrilled to be partnered with Quality Matters as another company that is really passionate about developing and helping you develop high quality learning experiences in an online environment. We were founded in 2016 in partnership with Utah State University. Our co-founder, Kenneth Larsen, who you'll be hearing more from in a bit, worked for the Center for Innovative Design and Instruction, hence our name Cidi, at Utah State University, and really out of the need to find ways to make it easier to build those high quality Canvas course learning experiences that they wanted to build, developed our flagship product, which is known as Design Plus. And that really has become our model. And what we've done as a company is we take tools that are developed by innovative universities like Utah State, and put them in the cloud to make them broadly available and fully supported. We are a company that provides training and support, along with ongoing maintenance and enhancements to the products that we adopt from these institutions. And we now proudly serve over 400 institutions across K-12 and higher ed, so a really diverse set of customers. So you can go forward to the next slide, Jim, that's fine. So what do these tools that we've adopted do? They specifically do some things that you'll hear more about from Angel and Kenneth and Claudia today, but on the whole, our tools really help organizations like yours, educational institutions, enhance the online course design and delivery practices, and really to bring that quality aspect to them. So today we'll focus on our two tools, Design Plus and ReadyGo. But just to let you know, we also have a course accessibility checker that we adopted from the University of Central Florida, who I happen to see has joined us here today. So hello, Jacob. That is an incredibly powerful tool that provides a scan across your entire Canvas course and not only flags the errors, potential accessibility issues, but really guides the course designer or instructor through the process of addressing those errors. So it really becomes an educational tool and allows you to increase the understanding and ability around accessibility. And then finally, we have a tool which also comes from Utah State University called Tidy Up, which is a simple but powerful tool that you can use to clean up the unused files and other assets in your Canvas instance. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Angel Mootispaw, who it brings me great pleasure to say doctor because she has recently achieved that title. And she is both a super user of some of our tools, but also a great steward for Quality Matters work at her institution and more broadly in the community. So I'm going to let her tell you more about how Southern State Community College has used the tools to their advantage to bolster their quality initiatives. So over to you, Dr. Angel Mootispaw.
Thank you. And when she says very newly, doctor, I'm as in within Monday at like 9:30 p.m. was when it was conferred. So thank you very much. And for those of you who don't know me, there's lots of people on the webinar today. I'm going to say good day instead of good morning or afternoon. My name is Angel Mootispaw, and I work at Southern State Community College, and I am the Director of Instructional Technology for the institution. So I'm going to give you just a brief background of why it is that we are using Cidi Labs, and that comes with, we are a very small community college. Currently, the team that primarily works in distance education is 3 full-time people, a learning management system administrator, myself, and an instructional technologist. The instructional technologist joined us actually during COVID at the height of COVID. And so with being a very small team prior to COVID, we were a team of 2, and managing online course readiness and quality assurance was definitely challenging for us. After COVID, the instructional technologist joined us to help courses get ready, but we were still having some problems tracking processes, workflow, and quality assurance. So for many of you, you've worked with what I call the dreaded spreadsheets to track course development, quality assurance, professional development, course readiness, and keeping up with those changes became very difficult at the onset of the pandemic. It was difficult before then, but tripling, quadrupling courses made it much more challenging. Part of those challenges came from who was working with what faculty member, how do we track who still needed help? Did we remember to update the spreadsheet? I'm sure I'm not sharing a story that most people don't already know. So what we decided to do was I attended I think it was a Canvas, an Instructure webinar that introduced Design Plus. And during that time, we also found ReadyGo. So ReadyGo was really where I started at with this project. And we began using ReadyGo and Design Plus very quickly. I think we had to implement it within a couple of months. We rolled it out for the very first semester in fall of 2021, but piloted during summer of 2021. ReadyGo provided us a way to track course development, and then I added the QM checklist, the standards, to the checklist underneath of ReadyGo. And as you can see here, each standard has a drop down. It gives the actual standard inside of our institution for the QM standards. They allow us to make comments back and forth. It gives us a history of what's taking place. And you can see here that not all of the standards are checked, but the course here is showing that it's ready. That's because our institution right now does not, we're implementing in phases. So there are specific standards that need to be in place, and we do that checklist. The checklist can be used by faculty or by the instructional technology team. So the ReadyGo instructor view tool does allow that communication to take place back and forth through email as well. And I'm sure that Kenneth will show that later. And it also provides me with a report that brings visual awareness, which was what was lacking within the institution. Saying the words that things were kind of not doing very well, or that the pressure of the team needing to get courses ready for day one, and there still being a lot of courses that were not ready, was harder to bring across than it was to show visually. So when this started taking place, I'll show you the first term report. And this is the report for fall of 2021, 2 weeks prior to the semester starting. And the status reports here, I'm sure maybe Kenneth will show this as well. I can create these. And so when I set these up, we put in how many courses were ready, how many still needed some quality assurance issues, how many were syllabi. And the one thing that's very specific for our institution is that every single course taught at Southern State uses Canvas. So every course that you see here are not just distance education courses, they're every single course that's being taught. So looking at spring or fall semester 2 weeks beforehand, having 126 courses that were empty was very alarming. It's alarming when you see it and you've not been behind the scenes working on it. When we moved into spring, we were now at 77 courses 2 weeks prior to the semester starting that were empty. So it made a huge impact immediately across the institution, not with administrators per se, but as a whole, with faculty, staff, and with administration. So Southern State has an instructional technology committee that's shared governance. We work hand in hand with our faculty members to ensure that what we're doing is the best that we can do for everyone across the board, our students, our faculty, and to make sure that we're maintaining compliance. So looking at those side by side, there's some numbers that increased, there's some that decreased, and that's really what we were looking for. 2 weeks before, we only had 5 courses that were pending and 77 that were empty. Some of that's because those courses were flex, but we went from 122 to 222 that were ready. 2 weeks prior to the semester starting. There were some QA things that were not met and some syllabus issues, but those usually get resolved last, right? The syllabi is the last thing that we usually end up putting into the course. So those resolve themselves very quickly. So shifting from Ready Go to Design Plus, what happened for us in 2021, Design Plus provided us the tools, and a team of us worked together to envision and create a robust template that is very much more visually pleasing. It minimizes the navigation menu, and it standardizes how the course content is delivered. So what you're seeing is the new homepage. The template for us is basically 4 pages and a discussion question. It has standard navigation and currently it includes 20 QM standards inside of that. So you can see here we have a course overview, meet your instructor, how we communicate, ask questions, and then our modules are linked directly on the front page. Our navigation is very simplistic now. There are a few other things that can be added for instructors that are using some different tools and or publisher content, then those get added, but this is your basic format for navigation. Before, facilitation was done in courses through many different modes. All of the assignments now are delivered through modules, where before the homepage may have been the discussion question, it may have been the syllabus. So standardizing the template by working across the college through the committee allowed us to come through a way that we were able to maintain, to lower some cognitive load. So the next thing that we did, and I don't know if he's with us today or not, but our instructional technologist, Sam Ginn, worked very hard to put some standardized language in place so that each course didn't have to reinvent the wheel or try to come up with that language. So there's navigational instructions. Now in the course overview, we provide some boxes and some drop-down menus for instructors to use to help with navigation. These two pages here are what we call our enhanced template, but many of our faculty members are adopting it, and the usage is becoming more and more. This is the first year that this will be the first full year that we've had it in place. It will be interesting to see some of the results and the things that are coming back. The one thing that I will say is that we have put out a student survey, and the students that had taken courses previously with us with a different template compared to this one, the overall satisfaction rate for them was over 86%. So they were able to find their courses much better. They were able to work within the courses much better. And just overall, generally felt like that it was much easier to navigate, which was the part of the goal for bringing this into place. The last thing that I have to offer, that's my last slide. The last thing that I have to offer is that with my dissertation soon being published, and one of the things that we have worked on is to see how this actually plays out across the board on course completion rates. And we have found within Southern State that the courses that are using the template with the QM standards in it now are having higher course completion rates than those that are not using the template. And with that, that is the story at Southern State Community College in a brief 15 minutes. And I thank everyone for their time. And I believe it's going to Kenneth now.
Yep, that's me. All right, let's do some playing. So I'm going to give you a little backstory here. We'll then take a little bit deeper look at some of the ins and outs of the tools that Angel mentioned. We'll take a look at Ready Go. We'll also take a look at Design Plus, which is actually a suite of 3 different tools. There's a pop-out sidebar that lets you theme and templatize and make that nice looking content in Canvas. There's our multi-tool, which helps you build and scaffold your courses and rapidly build those out. We also have our upload embed image tool that we'll take a look at. And then at the end, I'll just share a bunch more of examples. Angel showed some fun things that they're doing with templates. I also have some examples from some of our other customers as well. So let's start with the backstory. I started building Canvas courses back in 2013. I was a grad student at Utah State working on my master's to become an instructional designer, and I got hired to help faculty build their courses in Canvas. And very quickly started to get a little annoyed with some of the tedium involved. I also have a background in web development, so I am, I've been watching the chat. I do have the skills to do all that. But in Canvas, there were either things I wanted to do that Canvas didn't support at all, or I was manually having to write the code every time I wanted to do these things. And that drove me a bit crazy. But I was lucky enough to have a boss crazy enough that he let me start hacking Canvas to see if I could get it to do some of these things I wanted it to do all along. And that's kind of where all this started. With Ready Go, my supervisor one day, as we were leading up to a new semester, I walked past his office and he was working on a spreadsheet. And I said, hi. And I walked by a couple of hours later and he was still working on a spreadsheet, and I said hi. And then I was walking by a couple of hours later and he was still working on the same spreadsheet. So I went and sat down and I said, okay, what are you doing? And just like Angel showed you, we had one of these big spreadsheets that we'd populate with courses that they'd go through, and they had all these different things that they were going to check. And so I worked with them to see if we couldn't automate some of that. So we're going to go ahead and start with Ready Go. So Ready Go gets added, it gets its own course in Canvas, which is how you add people and how you access it. And Ready Go allows you to pull in courses. Now that can be pulled from Canvas by like browsing by term and sub-account to select the courses you want. If you have like an SIS system, you can upload a CSV with the SIS IDs and it can pull it from that, or any way that you can get a list of Canvas course IDs or Canvas SIS IDs, you can pull them into Canvas as well. And I'm going to go ahead and open this in a new tab so that it uses the screen real estate a little bit better. And when you bring in a batch of courses, you associate a deadline with them. So this is usually a name associated with some sort of, the date that you want those courses to be ready. So that might be like your fall term. And then with this information, what it does is you've provided the courses. So Ready Go then scans Canvas to gather a bunch of information about the courses. So that's this alerts and links column. So this will let me know if the course is published, if there's any content in the syllabus, if that syllabus was created with Design Plus, which I'll talk more about when we get to Design Plus, why you might want to know that. If they have a customized homepage, if there are any users enrolled in that course, if they have assignments, modules, pages, if they have a grading scheme defined, that's the word I'm trying to read there. If they have discussions, also provides a nice, easy way to link out to Canvas's link validator so you can scan and look for broken links. And so this is allowing you to see and get an idea of what these courses structures look like, where they're missing things, etc. And it's not enough to necessarily just know that there is content in the syllabus. You may need to actually know if that is set correctly, if dates have been updated. So these also will let you navigate directly to that course in Canvas so that you can check those different pieces. Then we have some other pieces that you as a user can work through and customize, or those who are assigned to track these courses. One of them that Angel mentioned was the ability to define statuses. So you can control what these statuses are. And these are something that the person reviewing the course can manually come in and flag to let them know where that is along the process. You can also take notes along with that course. So maybe you reach out to the instructor about missing syllabus information. And that way, as you get to that lead into a new semester and things are starting to get crazy and maybe you need someone to come in and give you a hand with some of these courses that are still lagging, they can come see those notes. And then Angel also mentioned that we do have a companion LTI tool that we refer to as our instructor chat. This gets added at the course level so that the instructor can come into this Ready Go view and they can see any of those chat messages that come through. It will also send them a notification through Canvas about that as well. And then the other thing we can take a look at here is that checklist column. Now, these checklists are things that you build out at the institution level, so you can have as many of these as you want. These can be internal to Ready Go, or they can also be built in such a way that they can be shared with the instructor in that Ready Go view so that the instructor can go down through and take a look at those as well. I'm actually going to address one question that I just happened to glance at the side and see, has anyone had issues with faculty being resistant to having courses analyzed? So with us, this tool was developed for our online courses, and our online courses have to be evaluated. They have to meet certain criteria. It's not a matter of the instructor chooses whether it is or not. They all went through a specific process. They were all funded by our online department to develop those courses. And so they do have to go through that process. We only at Utah State use this for those online courses. We don't use those for any of the others that we're tracking. And then this does give you some other basic information about, who's assigned to review the course, the information about who's enrolled as a teacher, how many total students. None of our tools gather any student identifiable information. We avoid FERPA data like the plague. But Canvas will let us know how many students are enrolled. So we'll reply that to you, report that for you as well. And so there's a lot of different pieces in there. There are also some additional actions you can take. So we can filter by those different alerts, by the different statuses, if we wanted to just look at a specific team member. There's also the ability to refresh the data. So we can go in and pull in new updates from Canvas. We do this on request because as you're 2 months out from a term, maybe you only need to refresh that a couple times a week. As you're 1 month out, you might be going in every day and refreshing it. When you're hitting those last 2 days in that crunch time, you might be needing to refresh this data every hour to make sure that you're staying on top of those changes. And so you can make those updates. And then there are also other things you can do. So I could come select any number of assignments, and I could do things like publishing them, and you can control who in ReadyGo has permissions to do that. You can just refresh just a select number of courses. You can add checklists in bulk to different courses. You can add or remove that instructor view tool. You can update the status in bulk. You can remove them from ReadyGo. This doesn't delete them from Canvas, just from being tracked in ReadyGo. And then you can also download CSVs. So if you do still like using your dreaded spreadsheets for whatever you need, you can pull that data in there as well. So that's kind of the basics there of ReadyGo. There is also this reports tab that Angel shared some of her screenshots from this, where you can come take a look at how are all of my courses doing, or how many courses are not published, or how many are missing a grading scheme. And as a team leader, you would be able to see that across all of your different team members. Or if I was in this just as a team member, I would just see that information for my own courses to review. So anyway, crazy, insane, high-level overview of ReadyGo. Next up, let's take a look at Design Plus. So Design Plus is a suite of tools to help you rapidly build out your course content. So let's just dive in, and we're just going to build a quick Canvas course here. So I have a blank Canvas course. I'm going to go ahead and open up our multi-tool. This is this course building, course scaffolding tool, not something students ever see, just visible to your content creators. And there are 4 different tools here. I'm going to start at the top with our template builder. One of the first things you'll see here is the ability to create a front page. I really like having a content page as the landing area for my students. I can make it look nice, get them really nice resources to get them going, but I hate that it takes about 7 steps in Canvas to build that. So that'll create the page, publish it, mark it as the front page, and I can go ahead and set that to be that home link. So this course now has a page as the landing area. But the main thing that I want to think about here in the template builder is I want to think about the different pieces that are going to make up my course. So let's say that maybe in each of my modules, I want to have an overview page, or maybe I have some lab assignments I'm going to be building out, or I have some reading discussions. Whatever the case may be, you're just creating shells for the different types of content in Canvas, and it'll build that inside the current course. And then I can go ahead and open that so that I can start customizing this template. And this is where we'll take a look at one of our other tools, the Design Tools sidebar. So this is where we can add that theming and content in the editor. This top's what we call the jump menu. So it gives you shortcuts to relevant tools. So when I'm building a brand new page, there's a couple of different things I could do. I could start by pulling in a template. This would give me any templates I've already created in my current course, or any other page I've built in my course that might be a better starting point. Or I can also have institutional templates. So maybe you have some Quality Matters specific templates that people can pull in to get some information immediately there and available for them that they can start filling in. The other option would be to start from scratch by choosing a theme. So the tools come pre-configured with a variety of themes, and the themes really just kind of dictate the look and feel of the content. So I can hover over these to get an idea of what it's going to look like. When I find the one I want and I select it, it's going to add a stylized heading into the editor. And because this is a template, I'm not going to worry about the text of that right now. I'll show you why here in just a moment. But I do want to think about what else I need inside of my overview page. So I'm going to come add what we call content blocks. So these tools are really kind of based on this idea of grouping or chunking your content into these different blocks. So maybe I'm going to have an introduction, and maybe I'm going to have, these module objectives that, kind of tie into the quality matters, or some steps to complete this module, or I have readings or lectures, or, whatever content I need. Or as the person creating this course, maybe in my course, I also want to talk about some current events. And so I can create my own blocks along the way. And these blocks get controls where I can drag and drop and change the order of things. I can go ahead and duplicate, I can remove. And really the idea here with the templates is to build as much of the structure as you can so that you have to repeat yourself as little as possible when it comes time to actually putting the content into Canvas. And because we use Canvas as native editor, these tools are compatible with anything you can do in Canvas. So you can build blueprint courses with these tools. You can create modules and resources that you share up to Canvas Commons that people can pull in. You can build that default template that Canvas recently made so that every brand new course gets that default template as you copy from one term to the other. Because we're building native Canvas content and we're just helping you get that in there, then that does allow that to flow with all of the content inside of Canvas. And then I can go ahead and save it, okay? I'm not going to publish it. Students don't need to see this. I'm just going to use this to help me build out the module. Then I would return to the multi-tool and I would complete that process with any of my other templates. Now with assignments, discussions, and pages, in addition to what you put in the editor, you can also use any of Canvas's other settings, like defining grading rubrics, or if I want students to post to the discussion before they see other students' responses. Those are all things that you can use as you build out these templates. Canvas's classic quizzes are a little more limited. We can only copy like the instructions and some of the very basic settings, like one question at a time. Canvas never built support to allow us to do things like duplicating question banks. And Canvas's new quizzes, sadly, they built as a completely independent product from the rest of Canvas. So we don't have the ability to help out with those yet, but I'm going to keep poking them until they give me the ability to get in there and play, and then I'll get in and have some fun with those as well. So once you've got all of your templates set up, the next step is to move on to the module builder. So at this point, we're just going to take a step back and think about what a typical module in our course needs to look like. So let's say I want to break up this course by units, and I'm going to have 5 units. And in each of my units, I want to have my overview page based on that overview template we created. And then I can throw in any number of assignments, discussions, quizzes, text headers. You can rearrange, you can indent, you can remove. Let's say that this is going to be the lab for my unit based off my lab template. I want it submitted online at 100 points a piece. So we're really just setting up this pattern for a typical module. Once that pattern's established, I can go ahead and generate the module list, which duplicates that pattern for however many modules I need to create. And now I'm just treating this as a course outline. So let's say this is going to be my introduction, and I want this page to be called Welcome to Class. And I'm not going to have a quiz in this first unit, but I have additional assignments, discussions, etc. So you're really just quickly going through here. Let's say we're getting started, halfway there, almost finished. This is our conclusion. This is going to be my final exam. You get the idea. We're really just kind of outlining the course. And I can save my progress. So if I need to step away to a meeting, or I want to pick up where I left off tomorrow, you can work on this outline as long as you need. And then when you're ready, you add the modules to the course. And this uses Canvas in the background to build out that structure for you, creating all those templates, making your modules, creating shells for any of your other items. When I started at Utah State, when we would work with someone to build a new online course, they'd come sit down with one of our instructional designers, and they'd have like a half hour to an hour conversation, looking at example courses, going over the syllabus, jotting down a bunch of notes. And then they would separate, and the instructional designer or one of our student interns would spend anywhere from the next 4 hours to the next 2 days building out a Canvas shell that they would hand over so they could start putting in their content. Now, in the course of that half hour to an hour conversation, they can walk out with a fully built out customized course shell with all of those templates in place that's immediately available for them to start putting in content. I told you not to worry about the heading portion when we built our template, because when you use the module builder, it'll push in how you're breaking up your modules, what number you're on, how you've titled that content. So now I just edit this page and put in the content that's unique to Welcome to Class, and then work my way through those different assignments, discussions, quizzes, etc. I can also return at any point in time to the multi-tool to add to existing modules or build more modules. We also have in here a due date modifier that gives you one place you can come work with all of your assignments, discussions, and quizzes to set their due dates, unlock dates, lock dates, etc. You can bulk update. Canvas has their own bulk date modifier that we helped consult with when they decided they wanted to build it. They've got most of the things, but they're still working on a few of the ones that I told them that they should add. So we'll keep this working as long as it continues to add functionality. And there's also a similar tool that you can use if you like to use scheduled announcements. It'll let you update your dates and times for those and even clean up announcements for the last time you build that. So that's the multi-tool. Now we've got a bunch of course content here. Next thing I'm going to do is create that nice landing area for my students. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this homepage that we created. I'm going to come take a look at the themes here. Now we're looking at front page themes. So with these, in addition to the stylized heading, we're going to get a banner image, we're going to get a navigation section. There's also a little message that lets us know the recommended, or in some cases, the required image ratio that works best with that theme. So I can go ahead and select one of these. It'll drop that content there into the editor. And I can use Canvas's editor to change content, but I don't love the games that I often have to play with the editor. So there's a few other tools. So let's say that this is going to be Cidi Labs. And we'll call this Welcome to Design Plus. Maybe I want a subtitle here. Maybe I want a description. Maybe I don't want those pieces. It just gives me a quick and easy way to customize it without the games in the editor. With the banner image, the default gets set at the institution level for what image you want as a default. You can also make some nice generic ones available. But I really like that image to reflect the subject being taught, and where possible, the personality of the instructor. So at any point, I can select an existing image or put my cursor where I want to add a new image, and then I can choose our Upload Embed Image tool. This will let me pull an image from my computer, an image I already have in my course or user files in Canvas. And we also have integrations with Unsplash.com and Pexels.com. These are Creative Commons Zero licensed image libraries. So maybe I'm working with a math class here. I can come search through these different image libraries, find an image that I want to use, go ahead and select it. Now we are automatically going to do some resizing. There is no need to upload a 2000 pixel image to Canvas. It'll just make the pages load slower and they'll never display that large. So we're automatically going to do some resizing, but you can do more if you want. And where I want this as my banner, I'm actually going to come choose to crop it and choose that recommended or required image ratio. Pick the portion of that I want to use, go ahead and crop it. I can change the file name, set appropriate alternative text, choose where I want that file to go, and then I can send that image into Canvas and it will drop it there in the editor. I can also work with my navigation section and add and rearrange and change icons, etc. And so now we've got a nice front page there. Okay, so we've looked at a bunch of stuff there. This page right here is just going to give us a quick idea of a lot of the things you can do. We do customize the colors for an institution so that it'll match your branding. And you have those different themes that you can choose from. At the institution level, you can control which of these themes are available. If you have a CSS guru on your team, you can even build your own. I did see some questions about additional themes becoming available. We're actually working on the next generation of these tools, which actually allows you to build things as individual components, and then you can put them together as a theme. So you don't necessarily have to compose these entire themes. So it's going to change a little bit with some more fun. But the toolbar itself is broken into comfort levels. Everyone starts at the basic level where they can choose themes, work with their content blocks, style images, turn links into buttons, add style and structure to tables, including headings and captions and sorting things alphanumerically, working with ordered and unordered lists, and working with your iframe content, adding in icons. Then as an individual user, you can turn on additional tools where you can play with styling, like adding borders and margins and padding and playing with colors. And we've got a variety of built-in callouts and text emphasis and highlight colors and badge styles and dynamic things like tabs and accordions and progress bars to let students see where they are as they're working their way through a module, and the fun little module list that Angel showed you that we can add the details for. At the advanced level, you get a lot of tools for crazy people like me who actually enjoy working with HTML and CSS, with some other fun tools there for creating your own custom styles that you can apply to images and paragraphs, and building pop-up content, and these fun little ungraded multiple choice questions we call quick checks that just provide immediate feedback to students. And then There are a lot of other things you can do, like HTML snippets, which are just little chunks of content you can drop in at the cursor position. And you can choose from a bunch that we've provided for you. You can also build your own at the institution level, like, and you can add in images with captions. Anyway, lots of content, far more than we can get through in this period of time. The syllabus section of Canvas is a little bit different. The templates are unique to the syllabus. The content block templates are unique to the syllabus. We also have these dynamic policy blocks that you can add to the syllabus that you define. They get added to the syllabus. They're locked in the syllabus. But with these, anytime someone edits the syllabus, it'll scan through, find any policy blocks, go out to where those are defined at the institution level, grab the current state of the policy, and replace what's in the syllabus with that updated policy. And all of the updates really just take place in a Canvas course. So it's in this course that you define all of those templates and those policies. You just edit the pages in this course, and that's how you define those different pieces. You can also, so we showed you building from scratch. There are also ways built into the tools that you can very quickly go from plain vanilla content that you already have in Canvas to something with that much more polished look and feel that you can use with that sidebar. Time-wise, we won't go into too many before and afters. We do have a bunch of examples. And as I mentioned, we do have, we did reach out to our bunch of institutions. We have what we call our showcase that you can visit at showcase.cidilabs.com that just has some examples of some of the fun things that some of our different institutions have created. And so you can kind of get a feel for some of the fun that you can have with the tools. All right. I don't know how long that took me, but I really want to hear what Claudia is going to share with us. And we want to have time to make sure we can answer your questions. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Claudia.
Thank you, Kenneth. Let me try to share my screen. Okay. Thank you for being here. My name is Claudia. I am one of the instructional designers for QM. I always like to attend some of the presentations from Kenneth because I'm a crazy in love with HTML code. So I'm one of those that uses, since we acquired Design Plus, I use advanced features. And still there's so many features that I'm yet to explore. So here at Quality Matters, we started using Cidi Labs Design Plus tools back in 2020. That was right about the time we were transitioning from Moodle to Canvas. So we experienced using Design Plus tools with already content, and we tried to improve, enhance the look and feel of the content. So our ID manager designed and developed the page templates, define key blocks that are consistent in all our courses or workshops. Our ID team is composed by our ID manager, one of my ID colleagues, and myself. So we're just 3 people that are focused in maintaining maybe 70+ course offerings. So we're responsible for the design of all QM PD offerings, and we make the effort to meet QM specific review standards and ensure that there is consistency across all of courses and workshops. And this way our participants can focus on the particular course or workshop content. When I was introduced to Cidi Labs, my mind just went picture and visual design enhancements that when we're in Moodle, it was challenging for me to accomplish. So in 2020, when our courses were imported from Moodle into Canvas, and when we had those predefined pages and blocks, our process to enhance the look and feel of our content was faster than ever. We were able to give our assignments, discussions, and quizzes a consistent look and feel that would allow our participants to easily navigate through the overview, objectives, and instructions of each activity. So this clear definition of sections facilitates the readability, which is the focus of a specific review standard 8.2 in our QM higher education rubric. So I'm going to show you some like before and after of our traditional introductory forum. And in this one, we had clearly defined the sections that are comprising the forum. And yes, we had section headers and it was easy to read, but when we transitioned to Canvas and using Design Plus, we were able to add some color icons that make it a little bit more appealing, the reading of this page. Now, the next one is in Design Plus Tools. Here is an example of some of the blocks that we create. Most of these blocks are used across all our courses and workshops. So whenever we're going to update or create a new course offering, my colleague or myself would just go to the course in Canvas and insert those blocks in there. And then we just replace the specific placeholders that we have predefined in each block. Before we were designing Design Plus, we would have to copy this content from a course template and then paste it into the actual course that we were building. Now with Design Plus, we can use our instructional technologies, creates a course blueprint. We can start inserting the blocks or template pages in the new course that we are developing. Which having the ability to reuse and update content is something that my colleague ID and I appreciate, because it really makes our work more efficient now that we have this tool. So let me show you another example. This is a syllabus technology block that we have in all our courses and workshops. In all this text is common and consistent in all the courses, and we have some instructions for the ID who's working in the course on what to do whenever there is some specific information that applies to that workshop, of course, that needs to be replaced in the block. We also have a how to request technical support. Initially, when we transitioned to Canvas, our homepage had just basic information, but as we started using Design Plus, and based on feedback, we identified other pieces of content that we needed to integrate to our homepage. So when we had the need to introduce how to request technical support, we created this content block, and then my colleague and myself went into each blueprint and just added this block into each homepage, and it was an easy and quick process. And we have several blocks like this one. For example, this next one is a reminder to due date that is common in some of the assignments that we have in our workshops. Now, again, I'm like a passionate of HTML, and probably I should wear a t-shirt that says I love code. So as I started exploring Design Plus, I identified other features, advanced features that we were able to use. And then I would go to my manager, Jillian, and say, hey, guess what I found? And then here's Claudia thinking, you know, I bet that she has another idea. So, well, I found tabs and accordions that we could use to improve the readability of our content. So with tabs, we normally use those tabs to present step instructions for some of the assignments that we have. And basically, we just chunk some of the content to make it a little bit easier for our participants, so they don't have to read a long page, what it was in Moodle, a long page with headings and bullets. Now we can chunk that content and allow them to focus on a specific step that requires something special for that assignment or that quest, and then they can move to the next one. Another thing is that we also reduce the scrolling and avoid that what we call below the fold, that sometimes probably they forget those instructions. By having every step on their face, we can assure that they're going to be able to follow and complete that assignment. Another feature that we use in advanced elements is the accordions. This one is it's a simple view how we use the accordions, and we use them to minimize the scrolling and allow our participants to form a mental model of the information available. We also hide some of the content that can make the page a little bit daunting. If it is a lot of content, we allow them to focus just on a specific thing, so they don't feel like, oh my gosh, I have to read all that. It is not that overwhelming, so we can ease their way into reading in the content that we have in there. And moving to our next slide is HTML snippets. This is one of the features that I love from Design Plus tools, because there are specific things that in Moodle, we weren't able to convey what I call key nuggets that we wanted our participants to focus. Little tips, alerts on how to pull an assignment, tips about content that we want them to focus on. And it was hard to do it just with sanctions or text, with plain text. Now with the snippets, we can code that. We have 3 kinds of snippets. One of them I call the info alert snippets, because we can insert these snippets into the blocks, content blocks. In my ID color and myself, we just need to replace the text with whatever we need for that course or workshop. The other snippet that we have are custom text snippets. These snippets contain standard content that is not going to change, that is pretty common in all our courses or workshops. So my colleague ID and myself, we don't have to start creating a block and enter the text again or copy paste. We already have these snippets in our design tools customization. And when we go into a course, we just go and plug in that HTML snippet. And we make sure that whatever says the text that is in that snippet is consistent in all the courses and workshops. The third snippet that we have is the custom image snippets. This is a new one that we created this year, because when you insert an image in Canvas, the image stays in there within the folder files in Canvas. But we wanted to have the ability to embed that image from a Google Drive. So anytime that we update the image, it's going to update automatically in our courses. So what we did is we created a snippet and we added some, this is what you require, a little bit of HTML love. And we added a special code to pull the image from the Google Drive. So now in each model overview, we have that snippet code, and anytime that we are going to update the image, that update is going to populate in all our courses and workshops. Certainly I can tell that the HTML snippets, you need to be comfortable coding in HTML, you need to love it. You need to be used to that kind of code, but it's easy. For example, my colleague, even she might not feel comfortable and in love with HTML, but if I show her how the code works, then she can easily edit some of that. And we have a style guide in which we have these options of what we have, content blocks or templates about of design plus. We have it available. So our PD, our professional development specialists, if they happen to develop some content, they know how to use it and they don't have to mess up with HTML. If there's the need for them to develop a content page and using these blocks, they just make the request to our manager, and then my colleague and myself design that mockup for them so they can be happy to add just the page in there. They don't have to code anything. So one of the things that I like about this design plus is that you don't have to have HTML knowledge to be able to create that. If you want to create advanced things, then you want to them by advanced features, but you might have someone that can do that for you, and then you just insert the code. So and that's how we're using Design Plus here in QM. And thank you. And now return this to Jim or Jennifer.
Great. Thank you, Claudia, and also to Kenneth and Angel. I think that we can agree that was a very packed session, lots of information. I don't think I've ever seen so many questions coming in a webinar. We tried to answer them on the fly, but Angel, with just a few minutes left, I noticed there were several questions for you around the development of your templates, kind of the process you followed in developing them, how long it took, and then how you rolled it out. Maybe you could talk just a little bit to that so the audience at large can learn more.
Sure, absolutely. So at Southern State, we absolutely use a shared governance. We have what we call an instructional technology committee that's comprised of 50-50% of staff and administration And then the other 50% is our faculty members. So we develop a team, and that team sits down and we talk about what's been working, what's not working. We'd come up with the template together collectively, then we present it to the committee itself, and then it goes back to our faculty senate and we make adjustments from there. So all the voices get heard and it makes things much easier. When we first rolled this out, there were lots of questions and things that changed. We actually are a union contractual school, and we had asked for a 30-day extension to get the template in place because this tool allowed some opportunities that we didn't have previously. So that's the way that we do it. It's and I would tell you that institutionally, you have to think about your culture, the way that you do things. And I would not recommend that you do this without buy-in from your faculty members. Make sure that you're using a shared governance approach. It'll go over much easier. They're in their courses every day and know what their students want and are asking for. And if they're collecting that information, it's extremely valuable for you to have when you're looking at those course templates. And again, I think I mentioned it in here real quick. We had a couple courses this didn't work for. One of them was a chemistry course. Because they use 2 modules at a time, they're using the course content for one course plus a lab component. So it didn't work predictably for them the way that we had set it up. We worked with that team individually and made something that worked for them. So there's always going to be instances where you may need to alter some things.
That's great. Great information. Thank you, Angel.
Absolutely.
And I know that Kenneth and I have been answering the Cidi Labs product specific questions as much as we can. I just wanted to say that if we run out of time and we haven't answered your question, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We have a contact us form on our website, cidilabs.com. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any remaining questions, or of course, if you want to schedule a one-on-one demo. We're always happy to talk about the tools and show you more of the good stuff. But I thought, Kenneth, we did get several questions about accessibility and specifically the accessibility of the content that you were showing created by Design Plus. So I thought maybe you could show a little bit more of the accessibility features in Design Plus in particular, since it's something everyone here cares a lot about.
Sure, let me find that page that I was on. I pulled up a couple of different things when I was sharing resources with people. So let me go ahead and share this. So the content that we create, everything we create, we try to build to accessibility guidelines, primarily WCAG 2.1. Some things are still in the process of going from WCAG 2.0 to some of the new features in WCAG 2.1, but it is built to be that includes like all of our accordions, tabs, et cetera, have the appropriate ARIA labels. They have the appropriate keyboard controls to allow you to navigate those. If we do take a look at I'm trying to think here what the best way to jump to. Well, let's just take a look at this random, really crazy page that had all of this content on it, because we do have, in addition to the built-in tools inside of Canvas, we do have a couple of other things that you can come in. So we have where you can quickly review your heading structure and make sure that your headings are set up appropriately, which there are a lot of headings in that page. You can quickly review each of your images to make sure they have appropriate alternative text. There is also, or you can mark them as decorative, there is also a link check. This allows you to see links out of context because your links should make sense when someone is reading through them, even if they're just scanning for a link, because a screen reader will allow users to look at links out of context. And if all you see is things like click here or more or click for details, those things are really rather useless. Because all a screen reader user would hear is link, click here, link, click here, link, click here. So this would allow you to quickly come in and adjust and work with those different pieces as well. Trying to think of anything else to throw out there for you with those. That covers a lot of it. But the sidebar itself, the content that's created is all built to be responsive to different browser sizes. So you can even get an idea of what that content would look like on, say, a typical mobile app or a mobile phone by changing the view here, because Canvas does let us add that styling also to their native mobile app. What else?
I think that takes us to the top of the hour. And so we probably need to wrap it up, even though we could go on and on, right? Jim, do you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, I would just say thank you. Thank you, Cidi Labs. Thank you, Dr. Angel. Congratulations on your dissertation. Thank you for sharing what you've done. Claudia, thanks for sharing how quality matters incorporated the Cidi Labs tools. And thanks everyone for attending this webinar. We will be sending out the recording. And I think with that, we have made it to the top of the hour. So thank you very much, and we'll see you maybe at the next one of these.